So one of the things that I continue to see from very successful leaders isn't just having a vision, but an idealistic vision, as Coach Dave Brandt shared with us in episode 210. His vision at Messiah College was to be the best soccer team to play for in the country. Now, way back in episode 157 with Captain Mike Abershoff, he talked about when he took over the USS Benfold that they were going to be the best damn ship in the Navy. Now, many would have called that an idealistic vision, being that when he took over, they were the worst ship in the Navy. John Wooden's vision at UCLA was a peace of mind from knowing you had done your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming. Pete Carroll's vision at the Seahawks is to do things better than they have ever done before, right? It's so important that we have a vision. Well, in the second part of our conversation with today's guest, Andre Pretorius, he shares his vision with us to be the best part of their day. When his players go home from a training or a match, that's what he wants them to think and to feel. It's simple, but it's inspiring. And I have to say, I absolutely love it. In this episode, we're going to unpack just how he is making that vision a reality for everyone, players and coaches in his program. Welcome back to the Coaching Culture Podcast with myself, JP Nurbin, and my co-host and friend, Nate Sanderson. We try our best to give you practical tools and methods to build your culture in 30 minutes or less. The podcast is brought to you by TOC Culture Consulting. I kind of slipped that in last episode, the name change. Yes, Thrive On Challenge is now TOC Culture Consulting. I was inspired by Facebook changing their name to Meta. That's just a joke. The name change is the result of actually some clarity I've gained over the last year and all the growth that we've experienced. I honestly feel for the first time, I know what we're trying to build here. I've got clarity in TOC's mission and vision. We want to provide practical resources, personal mentorship, and a supportive community to leaders all over the world to help them raise standards and strengthen connections within their team's culture. Maybe in a later episode, we'll unpack all this change at TOC some more. But for now, I'll stop rambling here and we'll get right into the second half of our conversation with Andre Pretorius.
Well, I think we want to kind of transition a little bit here to talking a little bit more about culture and some of the intentional things that you've done. And before we get in maybe to some of the nuts and bolts, again, I know we keep asking you kind of questions about perception, about, how your career as a player and then as a young coach and now as a more experienced veteran, but has your perception or your take on culture changed, over the course of kind of your experience in rugby? And I would assume, how so?
Yeah, so much. It's and I think we've all been in teams where coaches want you to work as one and don't take shortcuts and care for each other. But it's kind of like names on a board, words on a board. They were, we've ticked that box. This is where we want to go. And then if I have to reflect and look back into teams where that was actually good without the coach being really intentional, it was the teams with the best leaders that could cultivate that culture without the coach actually driving it. So what I've tried to do is really being intentional with cultivating a culture of that sort and getting the right guys in the right positions to help me drive that.
So let's just dive into some specifics. When it comes to your team's culture, what are maybe one or two things that you do within the program and you're like, man, that really moved the needle for us? Like, we did something here at a team meeting, or it's just the way we approach training differently. I'm just kind of curious there.
I think getting rid of our long list of the code of conduct was definitely one of the things where we put the responsibility more onto the players, and we've got two rules, and there's no money value to you breaking these rules, but it's not something where if your cell phone rings or you're late or whatever the case may be, we just need you to be a great teammate and do the right thing. So those are our two rules. And the other things we don't let slide, because if you leave it, you accept it, and you promote it. So when you are late, it's called the common sense consequence. And from there, we roll the dice. They've got one chance to get out of jail free, but the other 5 numbers are allocated to some form of fitness discipline where it's in the gym, so it's quite fun. Everybody's wishing the guy throws a 6. He throws a 3, he has to get in the ice board for 5 minutes up to his neck, and everybody's standing around. So there's a lot of connection within that again. So we use that. We'd rather use that to promote the connection and the team building and the cohesion than to alienate one guy and make him run, or make the team run for everybody. So, and that's also some of the things you asked. That's something that I used to do in that first year and a half, is everybody get on the line, and now I'm going to teach you a lesson.
I love that. And I think you're making it's something that honestly brings people together, and it's something fun rolling the dice, right? I think that's fantastic. Is there something that you've done, say off the pitch, off the field, in the last few years that you would recommend to coaches when it comes to that team culture?
I think we've got a couple of things, but the one thing that's really, and I might sound a bit selfish here, but the one thing that's really assisted me, and I mean, obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you hear this phrase quite a lot, was the installment of a captain's council. So teams normally have leadership groups, but again, it's ticking boxes. We've got a leadership group, but they don't really have a say. And we start off the season like now. We start with mentor groups. So we've got certain guys that we put in the as mentees. So either someone that's in the group for the first time, he's a youngster. Some guys who we know he's been in the system, but he has discipline issues, or someone that's just not reaching his potential. And we might just pair him up with someone who's really diligent, works hard, very professional. And so we have mentor groups before we have captain's council. And during this time, these mentors have got a list of commitments that they make to become a mentor. They've got to check in on the guys. They've got to make sure, because we've got a calorie squad that's training at 5 a.m. Guys were a bit heavy at this stage of the season, but the fitness, the aerobic capacity is not where it should be. So they do calorie squat 5 o'clock in the morning. They phone them at 4:30 and make sure that, are you awake? Make sure that you're not late. So, and that, to me, took away our discipline issues. It totally eradicated them. So small things like having to hand in documents or answering certain questions on the WhatsApp groups, or if it's not done, the mentor would check in with him. No coach speaks to that player. It only gets escalated once it becomes a problem. And that, to me, made a big difference. And obviously, your captain's council gets chosen from the mentors, so there's continuity. But during the season, the mentors keep going on and connecting with their players.
I love how you've kind of applied that at different levels, to create different connection points with your players. Yeah. And I want to circle back, because I think this is connected to what you're talking about here. I think so many times coaches hope that they have great culture because they inherit good leaders. They have a good senior class, or they have a terrible senior class, and they can't wait for them to graduate so they can have a better senior class next year, and hope to have a better culture. And it's one thing to say, we're going to make guys mentors and we're going to put people on a captain's council. It's another thing to develop those people as leaders. So how do you approach that? Not just choosing leaders and empowering them, but helping them to grow into those responsibilities to be better servants of the team.
I think we're quite lucky with the type of players or type of people we get in our system. It's not the cream of the crop, or well, mostly not the cream of the crop when it comes to your first years coming in. So, but we get so many character people into the system, and when we do allocate the mentors and off field, most of them will connect at the right level. What I have found is that when we're on field, is small things like tone of voice, timing of feedback, stuff like that. That's where they really they really need the development and just the self-awareness. One of the coaches has just spoken quite loudly to one of the players, and you've just walked up to him and say, listen, A, B, and C, you can't do that. It's not the right time. That's when that guy just needs to know that, don't worry, I'll help you fix it the next time. Or, so I think this helping them develop the self-awareness, tone of voice is something that's really, that I've found is something that most of our leaders, when we start with the leadership development, is something that they need to work on. Timing of feedback in when they talk to that player, or when they want to give the feedback. Sometimes the timing is just of such a nature that it just compounds the problem, and that you lose that player for the training.
And I remember we talked just going into last year's provincial semifinal. I think you were struggling with on the field communication, and that was something that you intentionally started practicing before you went into that provincial semifinal, and you ended up winning the final, right?
Yeah, we did. Again, thanks to you, I got a couple of suggestions, and it was difficult not to implement all of them, but I don't think it was the right time of the season to bombard them with all these ideas. So we took a couple of them and trying to get feedback, and trying to using the earn principle, and that seemed to work really well. It seemed to set the standard from the word go, especially when we did one-on-one feedback across the circle. So, like you said, we allocated each player to each other, and after the session, that player would then give feedback on his training. And it was quite strange, but it's something that I expected to happen, but not to the extent that it did. But it just lifted the standard of training, and and the guys afterwards, they were keen. Guys were walking across to the other player, even though he wasn't selected, to give his feedback in the circle, and just asked him, listen, what did you think? You were allocated to me, so can you tell me what you saw? And I think that made a huge difference, especially in semi-final and final week.
Well, now you got me thinking, because I've had so many conversations over the last couple of months since Doug Lamotte's new book, the Teacher's Guide to Coaching, or the Coach's Guide to Teaching. I can remember what the title is, but he's got a whole chapter in there on the art of feedback. And you keep mentioning that phrase, the timing of feedback. And I wonder if you could explain, kind of from your perception, as a coach, but maybe also in terms of what you expect from your players, when feedback is done right, what does it look like? And when it's done wrong, what does it look like?
Nate, I think as coaches, we shouldn't put ourselves above the law. So when things go wrong, and you've had two players talking to one player, for you to just intervene and give the exact same message, but now from the coach, is just going to compound the problem. I feel the personal touch is great, especially on field. And again, depends on where the player is within his life cycle, if you want to call it that. So we've got a couple of young players at the moment now, and the first session, our defense coach probably said his name about 60 times. So this kid's still learning the game, and although the coach was right, we had to have a chat afterwards and say, listen, we can either call his name 60 times, or we can ensure that he gets the message, but maybe just not in front of everybody. So that's the one thing. I think timing, the way it's done, tone of voice, understand and assist. So if you had to understand why he's making the mistake, you might be able to assist him. And then with your older players, I think it's more just sometimes it's just a name and a nod, and he'll nod and you'll know you got the message. He knows exactly what he did wrong. So again, adapting to every single player and knowing how to get the message across without him feeling he's been outed, rather than being assisted after finding out why.
I think that's incredibly good advice. I'm curious, as you've been going on this journey as a coach, your players have obviously embraced it, from what it sounds like. I'm curious how you've managed your staff and how you've tried to include them within this process, this journey, and giving them a voice. I'm just Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, when it comes to staff, what's your approach been with that?
Maybe that's the one part where I think my development still, I need to focus and get more intentional with the development of that, because I've got such a need to assist, without sounding like I know everything, but I'm in a position to assist the coaches that I work with, and I'd like to do that. So firstly, I think I need to be more focused on looking at ways to assist. The one thing that I do, and I did it. I don't think it was a personality test. It was some form of leadership test, and it said I was too inclusive, and it kind of bothered me because I always want my coaching staff to know that they have a voice, and I will listen. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to ensure that, or to take us into a direction. It might be the wrong one, but everybody gets a say and everybody's included within the conversation. And in servant leadership, they call it the decision-making rule, where the group decides who makes the final call. And I had a chat with them, because as a head coach, normally it does fall on your head. It says, listen, you are responsible, so you make the final call. And we actually had a chat about that and said, listen, we're going to have a disagree and commit understanding, where everybody gets to say what they think and feel, and the decision will lie with me. If it's everybody agrees, obviously that's the way we go. And if one or two don't agree, but that's the decision that's been made, you disagree, but then we commit and we make it work as best we can. So I think including them in everything that we do, decision making wise, has been a real big help. They've had a voice and they've used it, and I'm lucky that I've got coaches that are quite experienced. The one coach I think he's about 10 years older than me. He's been coaching for quite a while. My defense coach is, from all of us, he's the most experienced varsity cup coach, our defense coach. So I get him to play devil's advocate quite a lot. I give a strategic plan and I'll ask him, listen, I need you to poke holes. And he kind of likes that. Sometimes to me, it looks like he likes it too much. But that it makes a big difference for me that I can trust him that much and say, listen, get to the bottom of what's wrong with this. And then the forwards coach is, as a young coach, you kind of sometimes want to be a bit of a maverick, try different things, be innovative, and never has he ever spoken down to me or said, listen, this is a bullshit idea. This is not going to work. He'd get me to think about it. And, just that little bit of experience on his side, and the way he approaches me gets me to phone him at 10 at night and say, listen, I'm not going to play this player. I agree with you. We will stick with this one. Or we are going to play with this tactic instead of that one. And sometimes it doesn't happen, but at least I've got coaches around me that want to look after you.
Well, a couple things on that answer. I think one, having the conversation with your assistants and doing role definition beyond responsibilities, having the forwards or the defense or whatever it might be. So few staffs do that, where they lay out, this is the role of the head coach and here's how we're going to, approach decisions. And I guess I'm curious, one of the things that we find, and I don't know if this is more true at lower levels, with high school and college coaches, I don't know. But I think that there has to be some work done by the head coach to get to a place where they welcome feedback, or they welcome a coach poking holes in their strategies to make them better. And has that been a process of growth for you, or how have you ended up in a place where you're welcoming that, from your staff?
I think, again, I think it's Daniel Cole's book with the Navy SEALs where I screwed that up. That's pretty much one of the, being brutally honest and saying, listen, boys, this is my fault. This is absolutely my fault. And that gives them the opportunity to know that we can all make mistakes like that. And if the head coach can be part of of that honesty group, I can definitely be part of that. And for me to take feedback in, I think again, it's one of those things. I'm really afraid of what I don't know, and I might miss something. And if you have coaches on your staff like we do, even our SNC coach is he's kind of my culture coach, if I can say, sounding board. So if my tone of voice with the other coaches or the players turns into something that I might regret later, we have a chat, and he's got complete carte blanche to tell me, listen, you could have handled that better. We have another guy who's actually he's also a big fan of your podcast. Garen Creek is a very young SNC coach, fan of coaching, and I got him into the Leopards. But just as a guy, he sat in every meeting, and afterwards we spoke about, was that meeting constructive? Because meetings tend to sometimes run for hours and we get nothing constructive out of it. Is the planning right? Is there something wrong that you can see with handling? So he's also poking holes as far as he goes. And that type of people, they're priceless in a system like this. And, it's people that you trust and people that want to see you do well.
I'm curious do you have the conversation with your assistants about how you like to receive feedback? We talked a lot about player to player, tone of voice being important, personal connection being important. Are those things that you value on your staff and expect as well? Do assistants, know when their opportunities are to speak up and other opportunities where maybe they don't need to speak up or they need to do it in a different way? Is that a conversation you've had at the staff level as well?
Yeah, very much so. But also because, I know some of them for a long time, there's that way with which you approach certain things, and I think we're quite good with that type of feedback. Some feedback doesn't need to be given within the group. Other feedback we need to sort out within our management meeting. So the way we give feedback definitely does not just account for when you're talking to the players. I think within our staff, because the other thing I don't want is my defense coach being devil's advocate, like I'm trying to get him to be, and I snap at him, and because the next time, the only thing that's going to happen, I'm not going to get the value that he has to offer.
I absolutely love that. And, one of the things that you've shared with me just prior to us recording this podcast was just, how you've been very fortunate to have some good mentors in your life. And I was just kind of curious, who are those people that have been pouring into you on your coaching journey here that, you feel like really are important to point out and to share?
That name is going to come up again. Eugene Earloff, the coach that gave me my opportunities. And sometimes I feel bad because you kind of only get hold of him when things are going badly. But he'll never say something. He knows what it's about. He's part of his company. There's a guy called Hank van der Merwe. He's been terrific with the way that he's gone about grooming me in a leadership way and setting me on this path and showing certain obstacles before they even get to you. And then guys that obviously you don't get to know that well, but I worked with Eddie Jones, and there was a coach at the university now. He's coaching the England forwards. He's working with Eddie, and we had the opportunity and the privilege to talk to Matt Proudfoot about what Eddie's management style is like. Looking to find all of this, you just stumble across these phenomenal people like yourselves. It's the way that you've impacted the way I look at a team has been absolutely great.
Well, Andre, I've got two quick ones for you here, and then JP's got a walk-off question that we'll end with here. We were talking, the three of us, a little bit before we started recording about kind of your thinking on theming and looking for a theme for your current program. And I think it's always fascinating, when we talk to higher level coaches, what is the thing right now that you're really trying to keep growing in? I mean, you obviously have a growth mindset and you want to keep developing new and better ways. What's challenging you right now in terms of your growth as a coach?
Within within my coaching at the moment, I think I can do more for the coaches that I work with. And I'd like to be more intentional with developing myself to put because I've got an opportunity to better other people, not just players, but coaches as well. So, and I'd like to be, when coaches move on from this system, you want them to go into another system carrying certain value that they've taken from the system. So that's something that I'd like to work on more.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm going to get you out of here with me on this one. As you look back over your coaching experience, what is the thing that is most satisfying for you as a coach?
It's probably the honest feedback from players, not when you're winning seasons, but when you get players, when you're checking in on them and they go, they just, you can hear the sincerity with which they say that they've never enjoyed this season as much as they did this one. That players walk off the training field knowing that looking forward to the next session and this being the best part of their day. So, and I know it's easy. That's what we want to do. Also a lesson learned when I coached in that first year, players would come to training and they'd be complete zombies. And I'd say to the assistant coach, like, this is unacceptable. They're going on the line. We're going to run. And he just said to me, listen, one thing you need to understand is that some of these guys are studying trying to be actuaries and accountants and lawyers. They're staying up right through the night. They've got a test the next afternoon or 1 o'clock. Then they come to training. And you're going to get nothing out of it. And the light just went on there. And I realized they've got a tough day, even though they're students. They're still looking after schoolwork. They're watching film. They're trying to get better in all departments of life. Now they come to a training session and the coach is shouting. The coach is miserable, and that's when I realized this needs to be the best part of their day. So when that does happen, it's a great feeling because players want to play in that system.
I absolutely love that you shared that, because I think there is so many people at all levels that are just kind of miserable doing their job or in their career. And it's sad, and I just, I had the fortune of spending the day with the Phoenix Suns there recently. And something that, the head coach, Monty Williams, shared with me, she's like, yeah, we want to win another NBA or win an NBA championship, but like, we want to enjoy the experience regardless.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to show up every day and this be miserable for me or my staff or the players here. Like, we want to enjoy this wherever we go and however many games we win, we want to enjoy this. And so I'm going to ask you this last question because you've been with us so long and you're sitting in the sun there and you're roasting. I feel so bad for you.
Acon's doing really well on top. Yeah.
Okay, good. But this is kind of a bit of a fanboy question. You won a Rugby World Cup, and I'm just kind of curious, what about that experience? Like, do you remember the most, or do you hold on to the most? Like, what made that special for you?
Leading up to the World Cup, there was big doubt on my availability. I had chronic hamstring pain and problems. So I had to do a lot more to ensure that I'd be available to play. And, as luck would have it, or as the network would have it that I was in, my sponsor at the time, Adidas, flew me over to Germany. They had me see the top doctor there, who's Bayern Munich's doctor and Germany's doctor, Dr. Müller-Wohlfahrt. And I was there for 7 days. 6 of the days I got treated, I got injected. And if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have gone to the World Cup. And then I had the rehab work that I had to do. So the night that trophy was in the middle of our circle, as a team, we worked really hard. And Jake White said in 2005, I think, 2004, he said, listen, the only thing that's different from this circle to the one we're going to is that there's no cup in the middle. And those were his words. That team, we worked really hard to get to that. But personally, I had to fight a lot of obstacles to make myself available and to get selected to play there. So there was a lot of fulfillment in there, but also a lot of relief that that all of that came to something, and it was something great.
I think that's really awesome that you reflect on the journey. That's what made it really special. Also, I know Nate's having some back or hip problems, so maybe you can get him in with that doctor in Germany.
If you like 6 injections at once in your back, Nate, that's the guy to go to.
Well, I like walking in practice without pain, so I might be interested in that.
Yeah.
Well, this was awesome. I appreciate you coming on here. I don't know if you have any, anything you'd like just to kind of close with as we wrap up our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know how the podcast, if you can see your listeners and stuff like that, but you guys are doing an amazing job, and you're really consistent with the messages that you give. And I think that's part of the reason people are finding success with the material that you guys are putting out there. So keep on going, and I'll be refreshing my podcast list every Sunday to see when you guys are done.
All right. A huge thanks to Andre Pretorius. It's been a pleasure to get to know him and for our relationship to grow these last few years. One thing he mentioned today was the Captain's Council. He obviously gave a glowing endorsement, so I'd encourage you to learn more about this system so you can experience some of the same benefits. I've got an online course with resources all about the Captain's Council and how to be intentional in implementing it. The link to the course is in the details of this episode, as well as there's a link at tocculture.com. You can save 20% by using the coupon code Coaching Culture. So be sure to check that out. It doesn't just help you develop leaders, it helps you solve problems within your team's culture. Thanks for listening in to the Coaching Culture Podcast.